So, yeah, the Bears have always been tough at home. The winds are tricky and get a little bit cold there this time of year coming off the lake. And last year, as you said, Vikings come away with, I think, a 2017 win. And Bradford tried to play, then went out. Keenum came in, and I think that was a Monday night game, wasn't it?
I think so. And that, to me, that was one of the worst moments of the Zimmer regime. It was obvious that Bradford did not belong on a field. He couldn't protect himself.
Right, exactly. And so that it shapes up as a really fascinating matchup, and I think that's why NBC flexed the game, because I think there's interest now in the Bears. It's a big market team, and of course the Vikings are coming off a playoff season, and so it's going to be a high-energy game and really important game. And so we'll see if Khalil Mack is he going to be healthy by then, and Allen Robinson's another guy that's been nicked for the Bears, and they do play Detroit this Sunday, so we'll see if the Lions can put on a better show, but I have my doubts.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's talk about some running backs. A sad story and a very important story in the NFL with maybe some historical precedence from somebody who's dealt with a lot of these kinds of negotiations. Let's start though with Bill Brown. Boom, boom. Passes away, a great Vikings figure, a great personality, very beloved by the organization, and also, the father-in-law of Rich Gannon, who's, one of my all-time favorite Vikings and who still lives around town and does some NFL analytical work.
Yeah, and Bill Brown, terrific guy. Brownie, we always called him, and when I started with the Vikings in the kind of mid to late 70s, he had already retired, but he was always around the office,
yep.
Always around the Met Stadium, and so saw a lot of him, and just one of those larger-than-life personalities. When he came in the room, it lit up, and just really a terrific guy. And the last time I saw him was at a Super Bowl luncheon that the Vikings held for the alumni back in February, and he was clearly not doing well. He was in a wheelchair and felt really bad about that. But he is one of those guys who's emblematic of the old Vikings and the 40 for 60 gang, and just he and Dave Osborne in the backfield pounding the ball, and Joe Kapp at quarterback, and then of course the Tarkenton years, but Bill Brown, always have fond memories of him. Just a terrific guy and a great football player, and a hard-nosed football player too.
Absolutely. So my condolences to Rich Gannon and his family.
Yeah,
and
I absolutely agree.
And
Rich, a longtime friend of mine too. So condolences to he and Shelley and the family.
Absolutely. To get to a different kind of running back news here, Le'Veon Bell tweeted out the other day that he was saying goodbye to Miami. Everybody read into that he was going to be showing up in Pittsburgh. As of the time we're recording this, he has not shown up in Pittsburgh yet. Nobody knows what he's doing or what the plan is. All he's doing is giving away money and ruining his reputation. Again, you've been in the seat. You've been our team president. You've been a general manager, very successful teams. What do you make of this?
Well, what I make of it is the most ridiculous holdout I've ever seen.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
And I've seen a lot of holdouts. Some I've been involved with as a GM and as a president, but this one makes no sense, because once you've reached July 15th last year, the Steelers could not do anything other than sign him to the one-year tender. They couldn't do the long-term deal until March. So what are you trying to prove? And everybody knew he was going to miss training camp, but fully expecting him to come in about a week before the regular season. And if I'm his agent, I would recommend, you go have a great season. And the rumblings are they can't franchise you again, except at a quarterback tag, which would be $25 million plus. So don't worry about that. That's not going to happen. So you're going to be a free agent next year. Why not put your best foot forward? And then they come up with this convoluted plan that, no, we're going to sit out. We're going to lower our risk of injury. And all that does is send a message to all the GMs around the league that this guy is afraid of getting hurt. He's apprehensive about what he's doing out there. He's already missed 11 games in his career due to injury, and another 5 due to suspensions. He's got off-the-field stuff he had in his background. And I just think he's lowered his market value immensely. And now he's at the point where, first of all, I think he misjudged what was going to happen and how much the Steelers were going to miss him. They're in first place. They're doing okay. James Conner is second in the NFL in rushing. I don't think Le'Veon saw that one coming. And so if he shows up, he's got to show up by next Tuesday in order to be able to play this year at all. And if he doesn't, I think that further lowers his market value, and maybe he thinks it helps him. But he's never going to make up the $14 million, or if he comes back next week, he'll miss $7.7 million. He's not going to make that up in the next deal. So what ridiculous advice from an agent, what bad judgment on the part of Le'Veon Bell. And I just think it's ridiculous. His teammates have obviously lashed out, and David DeCastro said, basically, who cares and doesn't matter. And I love Tomlin's quote. He goes, "We need volunteers, not hostages." Ouch.
That was pretty good.
That was pretty good. And he's a guy that's always been a player's coach and defended his players, but I think he's had enough too. I think what also happened, there were some rumblings about 2 weeks ago during the Steelers' bye that he was going to come in, and then he doesn't. And so if I'm Art Rooney, the owner, president, if I'm Kevin Colbert, the GM, or Tomlin, and somebody gives that indication that, yeah, he's coming in and he doesn't show up, that further exacerbates the situation in my mind and gets me more upset as a management person. And
the other thing that's happened is James Conner has played great.
Yes, he has.
Which tells you that, listen, Le'Veon Bell's an excellent back, but James Conner is kind of an unheralded guy who's having a Le'Veon Bell type season, maybe or a 90% Le'Veon Bell type season at a much lower rate. He's a better. I don't know if he's a better player than Le'Veon, but he's a better bargain.
And he's a better teammate.
That's
right. And so I think all those things factor in, and yeah, so it's obvious that Le'Veon is on his last legs in Pittsburgh, and he tweeted farewell Miami. Well, pretty soon he'll be tweeting farewell Pittsburgh.
I mean, what team would really want to spend an incredible amount of money on a running back of Le'Veon's mileage and age, knowing what kind of guy he is now?
Yeah, well, I certainly wouldn't if I was a GM or team president looking at him. I'd find another free agent back, and I think what's going to happen to him is probably similar to what happened to Sheldon Richardson. He'll have to sign a 1-year prove-it deal, but by then he'll be 28 instead of 27,
right?
And it just gets tougher and tougher to get a deal. He's not going to get a Todd Gurley deal, which was $14.5 million a year with $45 million guaranteed. It's just not going to happen for him, and I think that's one of the things that threw him off the rails this year when he saw that deal, and he thought, well, the Steelers were offering me a deal with reportedly $30 million guaranteed at about that same average per year, and yeah, I think he should have signed that deal while he had it. I think the other thing in a situation like this is his greatest value, and this is another misjudgment by the agent, I think his greatest value often is to his existing team who knows him the best and has
already built a scheme around it.
That's right, and understands what happened with some of these off-the-field things and the suspensions and the injuries, and whereas another team looking at him is going to think, wow, there's some baggage there that I'd be concerned about. So all of a sudden, maybe his best option was to return to the Steelers, and now the Steelers aren't going to want him back.
Right.
Because why are you going to pay him that kind of money when you've got James Conner, who's a very serviceable guy and an excellent running back, probably make the Pro Bowl this year, and as you said, if he's 90% of Le'Veon Bell for a fraction of the cost, then they can put that money into other places. And so it's really, I think, a colossal misjudgment on his part, and wow, that's all you can say. And if he doesn't show up next week and decides to sit out the whole season, that's really ridiculously stupid.
Absolutely. And listen, I don't think there are any parallels from your days as a general manager because it was a different system back then. And I also understood in your day why a player would skip training camp, because that was really the only leverage they had, and they really weren't getting paid during training camp. What was it like dealing with Robert Smith under those circumstances? And I'm not, by the way, I am not comparing Robert Smith to Le'Veon Bell.
Oh, no.
I just think he's an interesting case in and of himself.
Yeah, he was a very interesting guy and player and terrific guy. I saw him this year at the 98 team reunion. And I think that I dealt with Robert during the salary cap era because he was drafted in right around the start of the salary cap, right. 93, and then when he became a veteran and kept redoing his deals. And what's always interesting about Robert is that he didn't want to go to training camp. As you recall, he had major injuries early in his career, a couple of ACLs, and then he was splitting time with Terry Allen. Then he came back and finally broke through in '97 with a 1,000-yard season, and looked like he had gotten over all the injury humps. And so, but in those early years, 95, 96, 97, he always wanted to sign a 1-year deal, and always wanted to wait till the end of training camp to show up. And it was kind of funny because I knew what he was doing, and I knew what Neil Cornrich's agent was doing.
Boy, Neil had a lot of Vikings, didn't he? He had Loudermilk too, right?
Yeah, he did. He had Loudermilk too. And so Neil, I had a really good relationship with Neil, and I knew what was going on. And so, of course, the coaches are all over me. Like, where's Robert? Where's Robert? And I'm going, don't worry about it. He'll be here when he needs to be here. And so, sure enough, 10 days before training camp, get the deal done. He signed, come in. And from my standpoint, and of course, I never told the coaches this.
Right.
It didn't bother me
right.
as a GM because I was okay with him missing training camp and missing preseason games.
And staying
healthy. And because I knew he'd come in shape.
Right.
Now, certain players, you worry about rookies that hold out. I never wanted a rookie to hold out because I knew they'd come in and get hurt. And that happened oftentimes with holdout rookie guys. But I knew Robert would come in shape. So then we get to the 98 season, and we put a transition tag on him, which guarantees him the average of the top 10 salaries, and we can match the offer. So Cornrich calls me and says, I have an offer from Seattle for 5 years, $25 million, which at that point in 1998 would have made him the highest paid running back in the league.
Yeah.
And paying him more than Emmitt Smith at that time. And of course, I'm going, really? Now, he had come off a 1,200-yard season or 1,100-yard season in 97 and had been, we knew he was a Pro Bowl caliber player. But the problem was, of course, I couldn't call Seattle and verify the offer because that's collusion. And so I had to swallow hard and agree to match the offer. And so I remember, and I tell this story whenever I speak at college classes about contracts, about negotiations, which I do oftentimes around the country, and use this as a case study, that was the toughest deal I ever did in my career as a negotiator. Because I remember driving home that night when I agreed to the deal, and I had to pull off the road on 494 because I was getting physically sick.
Really?
Because I thought that this deal was going to blow up in my face. I thought this guy's going to get hurt, and I'm making him the highest paid running back in the league. And I didn't get physically sick, but I almost did. And that had never happened to me before. And so swallowed hard, and then, of course, what happens? He has a great year. He's got a 1,300-yard year in 98. It's one of the key parts of our team that goes 15-1. And then I take off for Tennessee, and he plays, I think, 2 more seasons and led the NFC in rushing, 1,500-yard season. And then 3 years into the deal, he retires.
Yeah.
So did that wind up being a good deal? He got a nice signing bonus. And the team theoretically could have gone after him for a portion of the signing bonus. Of course, that really rarely happens in a situation like this, and they didn't. So was that a great deal? It was a good deal when I was there. In 98, it worked out well. Was it great for the Vikings over the long haul? So. And probably yes. You still say yes. But it's just strange how sometimes things work out. But the good news then is that we got him to training camp on time because he had to sign and be training camp first day of camp. So I kind of laughed when I saw him that day. I said, Robert, not used to seeing you here this early. And he laughed. And so that we finally got him into camp.
Beautiful.
With a big deal.
Again, if you'd like to sponsor this show or any shows across the network, we have Roy Smalley on baseball show, Reva on basketball, John Krasinski on basketball, Michael Russo on hockey. Tim Yoder does the Viking Update show, which is a great complement to this show. You can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com. So, it's not exactly the midpoint, but it's Vikings bye weeks, almost about halfway through the season. What jumps out at you about this NFL season? What excites you? What do you think has been a great story?
I think that you look at every year there's surprise teams, and I think that that's always an exciting thing to kind of evaluate and look at. And so if I'm going to say who are the surprise teams of the first half of the season, The Vikings played 9 games. A lot of teams have played 8 games. We'll call this the halfway point.